Right now, battle royale in New York City. Lots of people saying the mayor's race is in full flux, but the poll numbers show Christine Quinn is still the front runner. We'll get analysis from award-winning radio host Brian Lehrer. And next, no holds barred in Albany. As the current State House session nears an end, could MMA fighting come off the ropes and finally grab a chokehold in the Empire State? We'll ask Brodsky and Cahill in this week's New York segment. And later, the class of 2013. You know about the economy they're entering, but what advice are they getting from their graduation speakers? Good evening and welcome to RFL. I'm Andrew Whitman. Richard French will join us in just a few minutes. Thanks so much for being here with us on this Friday evening, May 31st. Well, we begin with the race to replace Michael Bloomberg as New York City mayor and a busy week of news on the Democratic side of the ledger. This was the week the news cycles turned seemingly for the better for Anthony Weiner. In his first full week as an official candidate, the focus went from his Twitter past to his electoral future, noting his level of engagement and strong positioning for the primary. It was a big week for Bill Thompson as well. His support for stop and frisk helping him land some key union and law enforcement endorsements, but also getting him a shot across the campaign bow from Al Sharpton and other black political power players in the city. And for still frontrunner Christine Quinn, it's been another week with a bullseye on her back, capped off by yet another anybody but Quinn ad from the group fronted by RFL regular consultant Scott Levinson.
Paid for by NYC and Forest.
I'm here to talk about Christine Quinn. I don't see her going out and sticking up for the people in the West Village who need a hospital. That's not leadership.
And yet with ads like those, the latest numbers don't show all that much movement. Quinn's lead, which was once above 20 points, is now just over 5 over Weiner. But other than Weiner's post-announcement bounce, the rest of the field not moving that much, with about a quarter of all New York City Democrats still undecided. So what's going on? Which trends are the ones to watch and which are false alarms? And where are the numbers likely to go from here? Joined now by Dominic Carter. And Dominic, you spoke with somebody who is in pretty good position to know what the future may hold.
Well, Andrew, if there is one radio voice in the metropolitan area who would know where this race stands and a voice that would have a major impact on where it goes from here, it's Brian Lehrer of WNYC. Lehrer has interviewed all the candidates and even moderated several town hall forums. But tonight, he shares his insights right here, right now. Brian Lehrer, we are 5 months from the primary. Who has the momentum?
Momentum. Well, Anthony Weiner, people may consider him the butt of jokes, but he's definitely got early momentum after entering the race. There was a pre-entrance poll that had him at 15% in the Democratic primary, second only to Christine Quinn. And now that he's entered, a few days after that, another poll was taken and he had gone up to 19%, while Quinn had gone down from the 30s to the 20s. So Weiner definitely has a potential constituency out there. He definitely has some momentum. And Bill Thompson has momentum, the former controller who ran against Bloomberg as the nominee in 2009 and only lost by a few points. He's putting together a coalition. He's the only African American in the race. A lot of black people will come out and vote for him, and he's popular in that community. He's backing off some of his previous positions on the NYPD.
Stop and frisk you're referring to.
Yeah, or an inspector general for the police department, which is a bill that Christine Quinn has now proposed for the city council. And the reporting is that by Thompson backing off his support for an IG, an independent overseer of the NYPD, that he's going to get the endorsement of the law enforcement officers' unions. And that would be a big feather in his cap, obviously. So a lot of coalition building going on by Bill Thompson. I would say Thompson and Weiner at the moment have the momentum.
Okay, fair enough. Ironically, though, you mentioned Bill Thompson. Thompson, as the only African American in the race, he supports keeping stop and frisk, which puts him at odds, based on polling, with his own community, the African American community. How does stop and frisk, we're about a month now from Judge Scheinland's potential ruling. How does stop and frisk work or cut for Thompson?
It could cut various ways. It could be fine because there could be a trust factor. If you're talking about within the black community, there could be an assumption of trust that as somebody who has been running on the fact that he has a kid in the city who's subject to this, and he doesn't want them abused. At the same time, people want safe streets. So people don't want the cops to just, pull back. It's not as simple as that. They don't want what they see as excessive stop and frisk, as it's been perceived. But, when the Community Service Society, which represents poor people in New York City, did a survey of the lower third, people in the lower third of incomes this year, they came out with the #1 issue for people in the lower third of incomes being jobs with upward mobility. The #2 issue was safe streets. Stop and frisk as an issue was way, way down. Now, it was higher for the black community in general, but still, public safety ranked higher, and so there's a balance there, and maybe Thompson will have enough trust to navigate that line and not lose his base.
I noticed when I asked who had the momentum, you said Weiner, you said Thompson, you didn't say Christine Quinn, the Speaker of the City Council. Is this still her race to lose?
She's still obviously a major player in this race. She's still leading in the polls, so it's her race to lose on that level. But I couldn't say that she has momentum because her poll numbers have been going down. And so maybe differently from Bill Thompson, when she comes out and says something that maybe is seen as a political gambit as opposed to something that she really believes in, she doesn't have that pre-existing base of support out there around the city. She's got a lot of name recognition, and she's got a base of support in the city council, because as council leader you have to be a grown-up and you have to put together coalitions to get things done. And I think that's part of her claim to front-runner status, is that she's been doing a lot of work. She's an incredibly deeply knowledgeable policy wonk, because you have to be when you're the Speaker of the City Council. If you're going to get anything done, you have to know all these constituencies around the city. You have to know the nuances of the issues, and she does, and has put together coalitions in council to get things done. But do people know that in the neighborhoods of the 5 boroughs? Maybe not in their gut.
What has been the impact of Weiner on this race? Has he taken all the oxygen out of the room?
For the moment, he's taken a lot of media oxygen out of the room, for obvious reasons. But I think that the media is instantly finding that there's only so much appetite to talk about the scandal. You ask the scandal questions once, and unless something new happens, what are you going to do? Every time you interview him, you're going to keep saying, oh, but you sent out these Twitter pictures, 2 years ago. Now you got to then talk about education and housing and jobs. And then there he is, and he's another candidate.
I close on this. A big week for John Liu. Ironically, he picked up the endorsement of Lillian Roberts in DC 37. What's that all about?
John Liu is the champion of the public sector unions among the mayoral candidates, so I'm not surprised about that. I've moderated 3 of the mayoral candidates forums, and John Liu has a base out there. In fact, I would go so far as to say he has the most enthusiastic base. That's not to say it's the biggest base, but he's got the most enthusiastic base of any of the candidates, because he's staked out the position as the most populist liberal of anybody. Anthony Weiner did that in Congress on a number of issues. John Liu's doing it as a mayoral candidate. They talk about raising the minimum wage to $9. He says $11.50. They talk about mending stop and frisk. He talks about ending it. They talk about not giving subsidies mindlessly to big corporations who claim they're going to create jobs. He says abolish the practice. So he goes around and says these things, and a real progressive base in the Democratic Party cheers. I've been at one mayoral forum where people were shouting, Lou, Lou, and he said from the stage, they're not booing, they're saying Lou, and it's true. So he's got a real base out there. Whether he can capitalize on that enough to get him to finish first or second and into the presumed runoff between the top 2 candidates remains to be seen.
Brian Lehrer, I close on this note. Any wild card factors out there yet that we don't know about?
Well, not in the Democratic primary, I don't think. But, Rupert Murdoch, through the New York Post, seems to be trying to egg Ray Kelly into getting into the race. He was going to run as probably a Republican in 2009 if Mayor Bloomberg had not run for a third term, but he did, so Kelly backed off. Kelly did not seem to be interested in running this year, but he may yet get into the race as an independent, though that remains to be seen.
Some good insight there from Brian Lehrer. Dominic, don't go anywhere, because up next on RFL, more on the race for New York City mayor. And if Anthony Weiner is the man who's the game changer on the Democratic side, then RFL did the game-changing interview with Anthony Weiner. Up next, we'll revisit Dominic's sit-down with Weiner just before he entered the race, including his now famous comments about any other tweets or photos that might be out there. Stay with us.